Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. The very thought of Pickett's charge brings to mind solid ranks of men in gray purposefully marching in time to drum and fife across open fields, flags flying, exposed while a crescendo of roaring cannon sends shots that tear bloody gaps in the lines, and yet the men close ranks and continue on through the growing battle smoke and beneath the blazing sun towards their fate with destiny. Less remembered are the men in blue who met the gray juggernaut on that third day of the Battle of Gettysburg. And yet, there are numerous surviving accounts from Union soldiers about facing the onslaught of an entire Confederate division. One of them was written by the officer pictured here, Edmund Rice, life dates 1842 to 1906, who served as major of the 19th Massachusetts Infantry and received the Medal of Honor for gallantry for his role in repelling Pickett's division. Rice's recollection appeared in the 1880s Century War series of articles in Century magazine, published in book form as Battles and Leaders of the Civil War. I want to share Rice's vivid narrative. He begins with a scene setting description of Union forces near the spot we know today as the copse of trees. He calls it the clump of trees. He begins, the brigades of Harrow, Webb, and Hall of Gibbon's division, Hancock's Corps, occupied the crest on Cemetery Ridge on July 3rd. The right of Hall's and the left of Webb's brigades were in a clump of trees, called by the enemy the salient of our position. And this grove was the focus of the most fearful cannonade that preceded Pickett's charge. One regiment, the 72nd Pennsylvania, in Webb's command, was a little in rear of the left of its brigade. Two regiments, the 19th Massachusetts, Rice's regiment, and the 42nd New York, Colonel A.F. Devereux, commanding of Hall's brigade, were in rear of the right of their brigade. From the opposite ridge, 3/4 of a mile away, a line of skirmishers sprang lightly forward out of the woods and, with intervals, kept moved rapidly down into the open fields, closely followed by a line of battle, then by another, and by yet a third. Both sides watched this never to be forgotten scene, the grandeur of attack of so many thousand men. Gibbon's division, which was to stand the brunt of the assault, looked with admiration on the different lines of Confederates marching forward with easy, swinging step, and the men were heard to exclaim, here they come, here they come, here comes the infantry. Soon, little puffs of smoke issued from the skirmish line as it came dashing forward, firing in reply to our own skirmishers in the plain below. And with the faint rattle of musketry, the stillness was broken, never hesitating for an instant, but driving our men before it, or knocking them over by a biting fire as they rose up to run in. Their skirmish line reached the fences of the Emmitsburg Road. This was Pickett's advance, which carried a front of 500 yards or more. I was just in rear of the right of the brigade, standing upon a large boulder in front of my regiment, the 19th Massachusetts, where, from the configuration of the ground, I had an excellent view of the advancing lines and could see the entire formation of the attacking column. Pickett's separate brigade lines lost their formation as they swept across the Emmitsburg Road, carrying with them their chain of skirmishers. They pushed on toward the crest and merged into one crowding, rushing line, many ranks deep. As they crossed the road, Webb's infantry, on the right of the trees, commenced an irregular, hesitating fire, gradually increasing to a rapid file firing, while the shrapnel and canister from the batteries tore gaps through those splendid Virginia battalions. The men of our brigade, with their muskets at the ready, lay in waiting. One could plainly hear the orders of the officers as they commanded, steady men, steady, don't fire. And not a shot was fired at the advancing hostile line. now getting closer every moment. The heavy file firing on the right and Webb's brigade continued by an undulation of the surface of the ground to the left of the trees. The rapid advance of the dense line of Confederates was, for a moment, lost to view. An instant after, they seemed to rise out of the earth, and so near that the expressions on their faces were distinctly seen. Now, our men knew that the time had come and could wait no longer. Aiming low, they opened a deadly, concentrated discharge upon the moving mass in their front. Nothing human could stand it. Staggered by the storm of lead, the charging line hesitated, answered with some wild firing, which soon increased to a crashing roll of musketry, running down the whole length of their front, and then all that portion of Pickett's division which came within the zone of this terrible close musketry fire appeared to melt and drift away in the powder smoke of both sides. At this juncture, someone behind me gave the quick, impatient order, "Forward, men, forward! Now is your chance." I turned and saw that it was General Hancock, who was passing the left of the regiment. He checked his horse and pointed toward the clump of trees to our right and front. I construed this into an order for both regiments, the 19th Massachusetts and the 42nd New York, to run for the trees to prevent the enemy from breaking through. The men on the left of our regiment heard the command and were up and on the run forward before the 42nd New York, which did not hear Hancock's order until Colonel Devereux repeated it, and they had a chance to rise. The line formation of the two regiments was partially broken, and the left of the 19th Massachusetts was brought forward as though it had executed a right half wheel. All the men who were now on their feet could see, to the right and front, Webb's wounded men with a few stragglers and several limbers leaving the line as the battle flags of Pickett's division were carried over it. With a cheer, the two regiments left their position in the rear of Hall's right and made an impetuous dash, racing diagonally forward for that clump of trees. Many of Webb's men were still lying down in their places in ranks and firing at those who followed Pickett's advance, which, in the meantime, had passed over them. This could be determined by the puffs of smoke issuing from their muskets as the first few men in gray sprang past them toward the cannon only a few yards away. But for a few moments, only could see such a fire continue, for Pickett's disorganized mass rolled over, beat down, and smothered it. One battle flag after another, supported by Pickett's infantry, appeared along the edge of trees until the whole copse seemed literally crammed with men. As the 19th and 42nd passed along the brigade line on our left, we could see the men prone in their places, unshaken, and firing steadily to their front, beating back the enemy. I saw one leader try several times to jump his horse over our line. He was shot by some of the men near me. The two regiments, in a disorganized state, were now almost at right angles with the remainder of the brigade, the left of the 19th Massachusetts being but a few yards distant, and the officers and men were falling fast from the enfilading fire of the hostile line in front and from the direct fire of those who were crowded in among the trees. The advance of the two regiments became so thinned that for a moment there was a pause. Captain Farrell of the 1st Minnesota with his company came in on my left. As we greeted each other, he received his death wound and fell in front of his men, who now began firing. As I looked back, I could see our men intermixed with those who were driven out of the clump of trees just a few moments before, coming rapidly forward, firing, some trying to shoot through the intervals and past those who were in front. The gap in the line seemed to widen, for the enemy in front, being once more driven by a terrible musketry in their very faces, left to join those who had been effected an entrance through Webb's line. The men now suffered from the enfilading fire of the enemy who were in the copse. Seeing no longer an enemy in front and annoyed by this galling fire from the flank, the 7th Michigan and the 59th New York, followed directly by the 20th Massachusetts and the regiments of Harrow's brigade, left their line, faced to the right, and in groups, without regimental or any other organization for that matter, joined in the rush with those already at the edge of the clump of trees, all cheering and yelling, "Hurrah for the white trefoil! Clubs or trumps, forward the white trefoil." This, of course, is the badge of Gibbon's division, the second of the Second Corps. This was one of those periods in the action which were measurable by seconds. The men near seemed to fire very slowly. Those in the rear, though coming up at a run, seemed somehow to drag their feet. Many were firing through the intervals of those in front in their eagerness to injure the enemy. This manner of firing, though efficacious, sometimes tells on friend instead of foe. A sergeant at my side received a ball in the back of the neck by this fire. All the time, the crush toward the enemy and the copse was becoming greater. The men in gray were doing all that was possible to keep off the mixed bodies of men who were moving upon them swiftly and without hesitation, keeping up so close and continuous a fire that at last its effects became terrible. I could feel the touch of the men to my right and left as we neared the edge of the copse. The grove was fairly jammed with Pickett's men in all positions, lying and kneeling. Back from the edge were many standing and firing over those in front. By the side of several who were firing, lying down or kneeling, were others with their hands up in tokens of surrender. In particular, I noticed two men not a musket length away, one aiming so that I could look into his musket barrel, the other lying on his back, coolly ramming home a cartridge. A little farther on was one on his knees, waving something white in both hands. Every foot of ground was occupied by men engaged in mortal combats who were in every possible position which can be taken while under arms or lying wounded or dead. A Confederate battery near the Peach Orchard commenced firing, probably at the sight of Harrow's men leaving their line and closing to the right upon Pickett's column. A cannon shot tore a horrible passage through the dense crowd of men in blue who were gathering outside the trees. Instantly, another shot followed and fairly cut a road through the mass. My thoughts were now to bring the men forward. It was but a few steps to the front where they could at once extinguish that destructive musketry and be out of the line of the deadly artillery fire. Voices were lost in the uproar, so I turned partly toward them, raised my sword to attract their attention, and motioned to advance. They surged forward, and just then, as I was stepping backward with my face to the men, urging them on, I felt a sharp blow as a shot struck me. Then another. I whirled around, my sword torn from my hand by a bullet or a shell splinter. My visor saved my face, but the shock stunned me. As I went down, our men rushed forward past me, capturing battle flags and making prisoners. Pickett's division lost nearly 6/7 of its officers and men. Gibbon's division, with its leader wounded and with a loss of half its strength, still held the crest. So there you have the story of Edmund Rice, Major, the 19th Massachusetts Infantry. In the thick of the action, he tells us of the chaos and confusion in the copse of trees, every foot of ground occupied by a Union soldier, a Confederate soldier, muskets pointed directly in his face, looking right down the barrel, while men are being shot all around him, and a vicious grapple for supremacy of that patch of the battlefield and to end Pickett's charge. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.